So if you know me, if we've gotten to work together, you will know that this is the biggest one for me personally because I think this is the biggest bang for your buck. And it's structured conversations. Um, so I'll show you guys some examples of some structured conversations, and then I'm going to show you how you can use that in the virtual environment as well. So my favorite is QSSA, and it stands for Question, STEM, Signal, Share, Assess. I would say this strategy alone changed my pedagogy completely. It just changed me as a teacher. And it sounds so simple, but it is the most effective if done properly. So you ask them a question, and these questions are usually tied to the TEAC. These are your most important questions that you want your students leaving the classroom with, knowing the answer to. Then, of course, you provide them that sentence stem. So if you want them to use that academic vocabulary, make them use it by providing a stem. Then also we have to give them think time. So, like we said earlier, our English language learners, they're doing twice the work. They're trying to understand the language with also trying to understand the content. So we have to give them some more think time. And they'll tell you when they're ready. So once they're ready with the stem, you can give them a signal like thumbs up, peace sign, thinker's chin. And then you can share. This is the most important part. So once your students are ready and they're like, okay, I've got it. I think I've got the answer in my head. Then they're going to go into their small groups and they're going to share their responses. There's a couple beautiful things that happen within this, and I've seen it where a student, maybe they're writing it down, they're writing their answer down, and I'll kind of monitor and I'll walk around, and then they'll share their answer in their group, and then all of a sudden there's this little girl who's like, oh, and she erases her answers because everybody in her group has given a different answer, and so she realized she had the wrong answer, so she erased it and wrote down the correct answer. Is that okay? Yeah, absolutely, because the point is that she got the correct answer. So if she got it wrong in the first place, that's irrelevant. She has the right answer now. And then after all the students share in their group, we use a Classroom Dojo or whatever randomizer you want, and you randomly call on students. So here's the beautiful part of this. If you want your student to know the answer to this question, they're hearing it being answered 4 or 5 times in their small group, and then they're hearing it being answered 4 or 5 more times as I'm randomly calling on students. So they're hearing that answer 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 different times in that one session. So do you think your students are going to know the answer to the question before they leave the classroom? Yeah, absolutely, because they've heard it so much. So imagine if we did that with all of our TEACs. And I did. And it was so powerful. Every time I closed out my lesson, usually with a QSSA, and it was always tying back to the TEAC. My students understood it because I was forcing them to use that vocab. It was beautiful. Now here's the tricky part. So when I was telling all these teachers, try this strategy, give it a shot, they would, because we have some really awesome teachers who are willing to try new things. And then the feedback I would get from them is, Sparks, this doesn't work. They're in their small groups and the students aren't talking to each other. And I was like, what? What do you mean? So then I realized that I didn't explicitly teach the share part. And if you think about how we shared earlier, let me go back to it. The sharing part. You have to dictate who shares first and who shares next. That is the most important part, because otherwise if you're like, okay, talk in your small groups, students are going to sit there like this like, I'm not talking, therefore nobody will talk, and it just doesn't work. But if you dictate who talks first by saying the tallest in your group, the person with the brightest socks, the person with the most emails in their inbox shares first, then we know who's going to go first, and then you have to determine who's going to go next. So rotate in alphabetical order, rotate clockwise, rotate counterclockwise, things like that. It forces every student to talk. And those students will put pressure on each other too. They're like, you're the tallest, you have to go first. And so then it already determines who's going to speak first. So I got a beginner L to speak for the first time in my classroom using this strategy. It was really beautiful. So Anyway, challenge you guys to use it. I'm going to show you what that looks like in a virtual environment here in a second too. Think, pair, share. So we've already done one of those. You guys are probably familiar with that. Think, ink, pair, share, which is just like think, pair, share, except it has the writing component. You have the students write. All right, so what does that look like in a virtual environment?